Good morning, class. I'm so glad that you were able to join me in my reading nook. As you know, we're going to be reading a book together as a class for language arts. I've already told you guys that we're going to be reading The City of Ember by Jean Duprat, and all of you have received a copy, I assume, correct? Is there anybody who doesn't have a copy of The City of Ember? Oh, Janice, you do not have a copy of The City of Ember. All right, that's awesome. Mrs. Smith, could you just run into the other room and grab a copy of that for Janice? Thank you. She will get you one, Janice, so don't you worry. You will have one. So today for our class, we're actually going to be previewing or doing some pre-reading activities involving the book, The City of Ember. Has anybody here done pre-reading activities or previewing activities before when reading a book? I know it comes with a couple of different names. Sometimes it's called previewing, sometimes it's called pre-reading. Bobby, yes. So you have done pre-reading before? Awesome. So you're already a pro at this, right? And did you have a positive experience with it? No. So you don't feel like it helped you in understanding the book better? It didn't really give you anything? Well, that's okay. We all have a different experience with those things. It's okay to have that opinion. I'm just hoping that you'll be able to get something out of our pre-reading activities. I really hope that this will benefit you, and I hope you'll give it a chance, even if you've had a bad experience in the past. But most of you, it would appear, have not done pre-reading before, which is awesome because we're going to learn how to do it together today. That's great. So all of you should have a couple of sheets in front of you. You should all have a piece of lined paper for the questions that I'm going to ask. And then also you should have a copy of this particular worksheet. As you can see, it's a word bubble diagram, and it has the word ember in the middle, and then it has 3 little bubbles on each side for you. Does everyone have a copy of this? Perfect. Awesome. So let's kind of jump into pre-reading. So the first question I really like to ask my students is, what do you think pre-reading or previewing a book is? Does anyone have an answer for that? Robert. Okay. Yeah, so it is. It's kind of like previewing a movie. So how many of you have seen a movie trailer before or a commercial for a TV show? Yeah, most of us have seen one at least once in our life. Awesome. So when we're doing previewing a book or pre-reading a book, we're basically doing the same thing as when we preview a movie. So when we preview a movie, we typically see a trailer. The trailer gives us some basic information about the movie, so kind of what the story is going to be, what kind of characters, what kind of movie, that sort of thing, right? Yeah, and so in the trailer we kind of just get a sense of what the movie's going to be about. It doesn't give away anything major, usually, but it just kind of gives us a basic understanding of where the movie's going to go, which is helpful when deciding whether or not we want to actually watch the movie, right? Exactly. Another thing about trailers is, would you say that they also help you to kind of understand kind of what the movie's going to be about before you actually go see it? Yeah, and it's supposed to do that, exactly. So when we're previewing or pre-reading a book, we're kind of doing the same thing as when we preview a movie. What's basically happening is we're kind of trying to see the clues that a book is giving us before we actually read the book, so we can get a better understanding of the book, and so that we can also enhance our understanding of what the story is going to be about. We go into it kind of having an expectation of where the story is going to go. So another reason that I like to do pre-reading activities, besides helping you guys to understand the book to the best of your ability and kind of being able to be familiar with what we're going to read before we ever read the book, is that I also want you guys to kind of have a sense of being able to use the clues that a book gives us in order to make decisions about books that you read in the future. Nobody likes to waste their time reading a book that they don't like or reading a book that just doesn't pertain to their interests. So by having some strategies for pre-reading a book, I'm also hopefully giving you guys a chance to be able to, the next time you go to the library and pick up a book, you have the tools to decide whether or not that's going to be a book that you'd actually be interested in reading. The third reason why I like to give students previewing or pre-reading activities is that I really want you guys to be able to pick out vocabulary that might be unfamiliar to you. So in City of Ember, we're going to come across some words that you don't know, and that's okay. So by kind of previewing the book, so skimming through, trying to find words that we don't understand, we can gather an understanding of those words before we ever actually read the book. That way, when we're reading, we don't have to be slowed down by our inability to understand a word. We'll already have a basic understanding of the word, and we'll be able to apply that basic understanding while we're reading, so we don't slow down our reading process. So overall, previewing and pre-reading a book is really important in order to give us the best understanding of a book that we possibly can, to help our reading experience to flow along more smoothly, and to give you guys the skills to be able to make informed decisions about whether or not you want to read a book. Those are all really important things when we're reading. And so some of you might be saying, well, Mrs. Radigan, how do I get clues from a book before I ever actually read it? I'm going to give you an example. So I have two books with me today. Our first example, I'm going to show you how to kind of do that investigation so that you can begin to see how we gather clues from a book. And for the second book I have, I'm going to pass the book around to each of you. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to kind of do some investigation. Think of yourselves as private investigators, and you've got to kind of uncover what this book is going to be about. It's kind of fun if you look at it that way. And then I'm going to ask you the same questions. And then last but not least, we're going to answer some questions about the City of Ember based on what we just learned. And we're going to be able to conduct pre-reading activities. And at the end of that, we're going to do a Kahoot, which I know everybody loves Kahoot. And again, yes, the winner will get some candy. It will be awesome. So let's get started. So the book that I have to kind of give you an example of how we do investigative kind of strategies for pre-reading is J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. So I'm going to show you how to use just the cover, the back, and kind of skimming through some of the pages of the book to gather some clues. So the first thing that we can gather from looking at this book is the title and the author. We know from looking at the cover of the book that the title is The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. And then we have the author, J.R.R. Tolkien. So there's our basic information. And for the City of Ember, the first question I'm going to ask you will be title and author. So we gather that right away from looking at the cover. The second thing that I can gather comes from looking at the actual picture on the front of the book. So the picture on the cover of this book is a dragon sitting on a giant pile of gold coins. Interesting. So I'm going to throw this question out and see if anybody can give me a good answer. So if I'm seeing a dragon on top of a pile of coins, do you think I'm going to be looking at a realistic fiction book, or am I looking more at fantasy? So does anyone have an answer for that? Yes, Janice. Exactly. I'm probably not looking at realistic fiction because dragons do not exist in real life, unfortunately. So I'm going to assume that this book is probably going to be a fantasy book, just from looking at the fact that there's a dragon on a pile of coins. And another thing I can gather from seeing that there's a picture of a dragon on a pile of coins is that it probably involves an adventure. Because if I think about my previous knowledge, a lot of the books that I read that have dragons and treasure probably involve some kind of adventure. I can also gather that just from looking at the title, There and Back Again. So somebody's going on some sort of trip, right? Another interesting thing to point out is that this book is a prelude to another series of books. So this is somebody's backstory, most likely. We can gather that just from seeing that it's a prelude to something else. So it's kind of the story before another story. So this is our backstory for another series. I can gather that as well. Now on the back of the book, and sometimes this will happen if you have a hardcover book, it'll be on the inside cover, but there should be a brief description of the book either on the back of the book or on the inside cover, and all of you have a soft cover edition of the City of Ember, so it will be on the back just like this one. So I'm not going to read this one word for word because we're a little bit short on time today, but if I were to just briefly kind of glance at this description, I can get some interesting information about this. So I'm seeing that there's a journey and a traveler. Oh, this says the period is the ancient time between the age of fairy and the dominion of men. So that kind of confirms the fact that this is going to be a fantasy book. I see some characters on the back. So I see Mr. Bilbo Baggins and I see Smaug the Magnificent. Maybe one of those characters might be this dragon on the cover. But I'm going to assume from the fact that it says Bilbo Baggins several times in the description that he might be my main character. And then after I've done that basic kind of investigation, if I start flipping through the pages, I can probably find some more characters. So I see Thorin, I see Bilbo, I see Gandalf mentioned a few times. Cool. Another thing that I can do is I can quickly kind of scan some of the beginning pages of the book and see if there's any words I may not be familiar with. So I see the word Hobbit a lot, and I don't really know what a Hobbit is maybe before I'm reading, and I might write that down and try to find out what a Hobbit is before I ever read this book. Especially because it's called The Hobbit, I want to know what a Hobbit is before I read the book. And if I just keep looking through, let's see, do I see any more unfamiliar words? Well, maybe I don't know this word. Scarce, that's kind of a funky word. I can write that down and think of a definition. If I really start going through, rune, I see the word rune. I might write that down and just kind of keep a little list of some of the words I can just pick out from kind of flipping through the books, skimming through. And we've done skimming and scanning in the past, so everybody should already be familiar with how to do that. Does anybody not know skimming or scanning? Yeah, I know. Yeah, Robert. Mrs. Smith can help you with this part. I think that'll be good. All right, so now that I've kind of given you a really brief understanding of how to find some clues, I have another book for you guys to look at. So I'm going to pass this around and I'm going to hand this off to you, Janice, and you can start this going around the room. I want you guys to start thinking about some of the clues that we can look for in this particular book, and let's see if we can find out some information just from what I've just shown you. So while you guys are looking at the book and passing that around, I just kind of want to tell you some of the questions that you're going to be answering. So if you're not looking at the book, let's start writing questions down for what we're going to be answering about City of Ember. So the first question I'm going to be asking you is, what is the title of the book and who is the author? The second question I'm going to be asking you comes from your worksheet, and this question asks you to look at the picture on the book and decide what do you think the book will be about. Do you think it'll be serious or humorous, and where and when do you think this takes place? So that's the second question that you're going to answer. The third question that I want you to answer is, what characters can you see just from flipping through the first few pages of the book? Do you see any characters that you think we're going to come across? That's the other question we're going to be answering. And then most importantly, I want you guys to be looking for vocabulary. I can give you some vocabulary if you have a hard time with this one, which I know you guys said that this is a skill that you guys feel a little bit uncomfortable with. So I have some vocabulary for you if you can't find any, but I would like you guys to try to find at least 2 words, and then after that I can give you some more words for the first couple chapters that we're going to be looking at. So that'll be really good. And those are the main questions that I really want you to answer. So I want you to answer title and author, what you think the book is going to be about, who you think the characters are going to be, when and where does this book take place, what kind of book is this, and then most importantly, what vocabulary are you unfamiliar with that you need to familiarize yourself with ahead of time. So those are the things that I really want you to be thinking about. So by now, everybody should have had a look at the book that I just passed around. So I'm going to ask you some questions based on what we just did with The Hobbit, and let's see how well you do. So I'm first going to ask you guys, what is the title and who is the author of this book? So who wants to answer that one? I know it's a little bit scary. I promise you that I'm not judging you. This is just a way to see kind of how you're understanding this so far. And I've thrown a lot of information, so I don't expect anybody to be perfect. Janice. Yes, it is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. That is correct. Awesome. So that's the easy information, right? Yeah. So the second question I ask is, based on the picture on the cover of the book, what do we know about the book? Jimmy. Can you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you. That's good. Okay. Exactly. So we have kind of a moving mechanical thing, and you're right. From the title, we're going to assume that it's the moving castle, and it's actually walking, right? What else do you see? So there's a woman standing in front of the castle, so maybe that's one of our main characters. Yeah, exactly. And where does this take place? Jimmy, you said enough. I'm going to move on to somebody else if that's okay. Carter, yes. So it's taking place in a field, and you've got this big wide open sky in front of you. So maybe in the countryside, exactly. Next person, tell me, based on the information you read on the back, is there anything that you learned from reading the back and flipping through some of the pages? So what are our characters? What is our story? Janice again? Okay. So Sophie is a character. Sophie what? Sophie Hatter. Howl, and what do we know about Howl? Howl's a wizard, and he's dark and mysterious. Did you learn anything about Sophie? So she's the daughter of a hatter. Okay. And she kind of feels bad about herself. And she's trying to find her destiny. Perfect. So that's quite a bit. And is this story realistic fiction, or are we looking at something else? Carter again. Yeah, so because we've got a moving house, and because we kind of have this wizard kind of story going on as well, we're going to assume this is probably fantasy again, not realistic fiction, because wizards and moving castles don't exist in real life. So awesome! Did anybody get any vocabulary words? Yes, Julie. Sconce. So that's exactly, so a sconce is kind of like if you have a candle or something up on the wall, it's the thing that holds it in place. But, and I'm just telling you that because this isn't the book that we're doing. But if this was a book that we were doing, that would be one of the words you would write down in your vocabulary list and find a definition for. Exactly. That's awesome. Good job. You guys are all doing fantastic. You're already like pro investigators. So let's move on to actually looking at the city of Ember. So everybody should have a copy of the book in front of them. Exactly. And because you guys all have the copies, I don't have mine right in front of me, but I do fortunately have a picture of the book right in front of me. Should look like this, right? So it's a very interesting book cover, and I can tell you a little bit about it. So here's your title, here's your author. Everybody's got that? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to actually look at, we have kind of a light bulb with a city, and we've got 2 kids. So what is that telling you about the book? And then I want you guys to look at the description on the back. Perfect. And I want you guys to skim the book and see if you can find vocab. And please let me know if you can't, because I will help you with that. And then once you've done that and answered the questions, I want you guys to move on to, we have this awesome diagram. So in case you didn't know, ember. Does anyone know what an ember is? Nobody knows what an ember is. Okay, so if you have a fire and the fire's dying down, you don't have any flames anymore, you're left with what? Hot burning coals. So that's what an ember is. It's like a hot burning coal or piece of wood or whatever that's left after the flames have died out. And what this diagram asks you to do is to think of 6 words that you associate with ember and see if it gives you any clues about this story. So everybody should be answering the following questions. What is the title of the book and the author? What kind of book is this? Is it funny or is it serious? What clues do the pictures in the description give you about what the book's going to be about? When and where do you think it takes place? And try to give me 2 vocabulary words that you don't know just from kind of flipping through the pages. Awesome. And at this point, I would give my students about 10-15 minutes to actually complete those following questions. I'd be walking around the room with a paraprofessional at this point, making sure everybody understands what's going on in the book. And once they actually finish the book, we would move on to our exit ticket. And so this is what I would do for the exit ticket. So everybody, now that we've finished with our worksheet, we have a really fun activity to kind of give us a way to kind of take us out. So all of you love Kahoot. So I've come up with a Kahoot about the city of Ember. Now nobody has to get all the questions right. I'm not expecting you to get the questions right because we've only previewed the book, so you should only have some of the information. But this is a good way to see kind of development. So we're going to take the quiz now. We're going to take the quiz after we read the book, and you can see kind of how you've progressed as a reader. But it's also going to show you that this pre-reading activity really does give us some clues and helps you to be able to answer some questions. So our class code for this one is 7935207. So please put that into your computers and we'll start the Kahoot. And then I would take the kids through the Kahoot, see how they do, and then once we finish reading the book, we would do that. So that's kind of my lesson plan. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good night.